And one of the things that I think we're overlooking and blithely ignoring as we cut our budgets in the military is that the Chinese have developed a tremendous capability to take out our satellites, upon which most of our communications, internet programs, and everything else are based. And we have eliminated or cut most of our anti-satellite defenses, anti-satellite programs to protect our satellites, and they've developed them. We don't. This nation lies absolutely naked today. And the other thing is the cyber war that's so prevalent. The Chinese are behind most of the attacks on our banking systems, communication systems, and penetrated the White House, penetrated a substantial number of our serious communications in the Defense Department. So we're living in a dream world if we think that we're going to come through unscathed if we keep cutting our defenses. And they know it. They read the newspapers. Just as Hitler read the newspapers when my father and uncle were practicing in Maryland in the reserves, in the Army reserves, with wooden rifles. And they think, see us as we reduce our capabilities. And when you're head of the responsibility, as I did as Secretary of the Navy, to build weapon systems, you recognize that every major weapon system is a 10-year lead time program. You can't build anything inside of 10 years. So if you feel that we're going to, major threat period programs will be needed 10 years from now, we should be building them now. Satellite protection programs and all of our communications here that were so vulnerable. Plus the fact that, of course, we now know that the Chinese have been able to develop a missile capable of penetrating our defenses on our final shield of America, which is the aircraft carriers. They now have an intercontinental ballistic missile that can penetrate our support areas, usually 600, 800 miles out beyond our carrier capabilities. They can now penetrate that, which the Soviets never were able to do. So what do we got left? We have a wonderful program, a submarine program, still one of the best in the world. In London, we're building 2 a year with the Virginia class, and which, by the way, supplies a tremendous amount of support for Rhode Island through Quonset, where a large part of our submarine equipment for New London is built. But so much for this, that's my main preoccupation in life right now these days, serving as chairman of the Defense Foreign Foundation in Washington and a number of other organizations involved in that. But I really shouldn't get into something as serious as that on a joyous occasion like this. But I wanted to bring it up because I find so little relevance in today's media to these threats, and you are the leaders of this country, and we desperately need your help to bring awareness to the public. Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, experiences with them, I'll make it very brief. I first met Margaret Thatcher in 1981 when she and Ronald Reagan founded something called the International Democrat Union. I was then ambassador of the OAS to Latin America. And this was after previous assignments in government. I was one of those government officials, when they ran out of other candidates, they always put me on the job. Ambassador to the Netherlands. I was always very flattered as a broken down cattle farmer from Little Compton to be given these jobs. And I've been there 60 years, and Scott and I are old timers down there now, and we were very flattered to be invited tonight. But comes now, she appointed us to me as treasurer for the International Democrat Union, which was spread around 40 countries in the rest of the world. With Ronald Reagan, and she thought it was important to create an atmosphere for democracy in a lot of these broken down countries, and most of them are broken down, by the way, and getting worse today. So we were able, and so today when you go through Latin America, moving away from, most of those nations have moved away from totalitarian, confiscatory states to democracies, and you find that true throughout the world. The number of democracies has increased by 5 times since 1981. It doesn't mean they're perfect democracies. They're not. They're not American democracies by any means in many cases, but they do have elections, and that's a step in the right direction. So I served in that job. But by the way, an anecdote, Margaret asked me one time, how's it going in Latin America? We put in a fellow, Jose Serrano, who was our vice chairman of the International Democrat Union, as president for El Salvador. And I had written the Jose Serrano Victory March for the occasion. We went down and had a big celebration, everybody marching around and flags waving and all that. And about 6 months later, I went down to visit with Jose in one of my tours of duty. And I got to the presidential palace with all the huge gates and fanfare that goes with the Latin American palace. And I said to the guard, "Where's Jose?" He said, "He'd gone to Panama." I said, "What do you mean gone to Panama?" "Well, he went to Panama with $55 million. And so my next tour, because Panama was part of my beat too, as ambassador to the OAS, I said to Jose, I saw him over there in Panama, and I said, "Jose, what the hell did you do? You were honored vice chairman of the International Democrat Union, and you get to be president of El Salvador, and now you've got over here with $55 million. And he said, "Bill, you have to understand it was my turn." You'll see some of that being played out today in Argentina and other countries. It's nothing new, of course. Mrs. Thatcher once took Ronald Reagan aside and said, "Ronnie," she called him Ronnie, and Mr. Reagan Ronnie told me this afterwards. She said, "What's that, Maggie?" And she said, "You know, Bill's your greatest ambassador." And Ronnie said, "Well, look, I've got 152 ambassadors, and I love Bill, but why do you say that?" And she said, "Because every time I give one of my one of my speeches, Bill's always taking careful notes of everything I say, sitting in the front row." And so, of course, I've never taken a note on any political speech in my life, but I was always sketched, 600, as you mentioned, 600 of these books. I sketch everybody that moves, going all the way back to Truman and Eisenhower's administrations and all the folks that I've served with. And so when Margaret Thatcher came last year to Heritage Foundation and gave us $5 million, we had to match it with another $5 million and set up the Margaret Thatcher Foundation. And we made her honorary chairman of Heritage. I had to confess to her, and they put me next to her at dinner, and I had to confess, and I said, "Margaret, you gave me high honor to say that I'd taken all these careful notes on all your wonderful speeches, and they were wonderful speeches, I must say, but I don't remember a word of anything you ever said. But I do have a confession, and I brought out the 3 sketches or 4 sketches that I'd made of her. She signed each one to my dear friend Bill, and laughed like hell. Arthur Fiedler once told me the secret of conducting, and I wrote 10 pieces for the Boston Pops, and he said the great secret of conducting is when the band stops playing, stop waving. So I will say one thing finally, and that was called the Margaret Thatcher Freedom March. She was very pleased about it. But one of the things that I have to confess in my own demeanor, it's a little bit sloppy tonight, as I always am, being a dirt farmer from Little Compton. But so she said, because she believed in dressing well, and she told us a joke on me one time. She said, "Somewhere in a distant motel, the drapes are missing."